Hey guys, Chip here. I want to talk today about some strategies of moving from SketchUp to Blender. It's one of the things I've been looking at. We've been getting quite involved in some digital augmented reality assets development, and I've been working with a friend of mine, Jerry Perkins, aka masterxeon1001, and so I thought what I'd do is talk about modeling strategies, ways that you would do something in SketchUp and then how you would do those in Blender, because there's a lot of tutorials out there on getting started with Blender and how to create a cube and how to rotate it and how to translate it and all that. But what I want to do is talk about how do we use our SketchUp product to create models, and how we do the same thing in Blender. So I met with a couple people actually, Jerry Perkins and Jim Body, a guy, a fellow, another acquaintance out in Atlanta that's doing some pretty interesting things, and I got some insights. Today I'm going to be visiting mostly with Jerry Perkins and talking about some strategies, how he would try and complete the same kind of modeling that I do in SketchUp. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, what's up everyone? Chip here. I'm going to talk today about Blender actually, and I've got a good friend of mine, Jerry Perkins, aka masterxeon1001. Say hi, Jerry.
Hello, everyone.
And Jerry's helping with my transition to Blender. He's like one of the top Blender artists in the world. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically do something in SketchUp and say, Jerry, how would you do this? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to create this object, kind of a house structure. So I'll draw this, and then I'm going to, oops, sorry, we're going to get out of that. There we go. And we'll raise the roof up. We'll do, there we are. Raise the roof a little bit, and then I'm going to basically create some windows here. So I'll take this first box here. As you can see, I select this, and in one of the nice things that you can do in SketchUp is you have a really very flexible array tool. So I'll drag this, move it over here, and say divide by, hit the divide key by 5. And now that I have that done, I'll go back to the push-pull, stick it in here, and I can just double-click on the push-pull. So that's the object I'm trying to create. It's very accurate. It's very simple. So I'm going to switch it over to Jerry, and Jerry's going to talk through how he would do it. Okay, so Jerry, let me switch over to you. There we go. You take it away.
All right, so a little less accurate. I see there's 6 windows. So first thing I'll do is TZ1 to put on top, Control A to set the location, so that way scaling is from the origin. We'll SX2. Select the top edge after adding an edge loop with Control R. We'll bring this one up. We'll Control R. We'll 6 edge loops, which should give us 5 edge loops, which will give us 6 windows. And in this case, we could press Control B to allow some spacing, and then put a loop in between. SZ0.
That's scaled that line, right?
Yeah, so should again with it like this, we press SZ and then 0 on the numpad to finish that off. Control V to space them. There's also the option of Control Shift R now, but it's not as perfected yet. So now with this, we'll bring this up, and I'll select these first faces and press Alt E and use a tool that I use called Destructive Extrude, and we'll push those in. And then we can select everything and even use W symmetrize. You symmetrize it on the -Y from the +Y, and we're complete.
Okay, we're back. So so now we're going to show something called components, which is instancing. Pretty easy to do. I'm going to take this, group this so you can keep these components separate. Take this cylinder, and I'll take that and I'll make an instance out of it, a component we call component, and then I can take it and move it to here, and then multiply it by 3, or by 4, I guess, by 4. There we go. And so now that we have instances, I can come in here and hit the push-pull and pull this out, and anything we do to one of these will get done to all 3 of them, or all 5 of them. So, okay, so I'm going to switch over to Jerry now and let him have a shot at this. Okay, Jerry?
All right, so there's a couple ways we could go about it. You had a cylinder in between your first column gap.
So let me ask you real quick. So what did you set an origin point to the middle of that? Is that right?
Yes. So basically, I selected the edge and I pressed Shift S to snap my cursor to selected, which put it precisely
in the middle. Got it. Okay. Got it. Okay. So that means anything you put in there becomes an origin, becomes that spot. Got it.
Call RX90 to rotate it on the 90. Then we'll just place this one here. The amount of space between these, if we were to measure it, I mean, we can be precise with it. So we'll test that here. In fact, we'll subdivide this one as well. And we see that we are let's see, 23.02 times 2, 04 plus 0.286. I'm not going to calculate that. But if we were to try it via array, which here I'll do it less automated, we can add an array and then move it out on the X till it's where we want, and then have it repeat. Make sure it's precise. However, this way we're having to be a little more visual with things.
So let me understand that. But that array, now that you have that array, it's always there, correct?
Yeah. So if you make any edits on the first one,
got
it will happen to all of them. And so that's the first method, which is the array. However, if we were to take this and convert it to a mesh, and let's just separate it by loose parts, which is just a way of exploding a creation. So right now, all this stuff is separated. However, it is placed where we want. So this one, I'm able to modify it exactly how I want, and that's due to this object's mesh data being individual. However, you can select multiple objects, which in this case, I'm shift selecting all these, and then shift selecting the prime one that I want them to all become. And I can press Shift L or Control L, and that'll bring up the object data menu. And so notice when I click on object data, how a number is going to appear way over here. And that's because all these objects are now, wait, did I do that right? Let's try it again. All right, I see where I went wrong. So all these objects share the same origin. As in they're rotating around this one because when they exploded, they all shared the same origin of the primary. What we'll do is just give an origin to each of them individually.
How do you do that?
In this case, what I did was I pressed Shift S and used origin to geometry. However, in a normal Blender setup, you would press Control Shift Alt C, and that would bring up your origin to
geometry. Got it.
So we'll choose origin to geometry. However, Shift S is a little bit easier than the tiger claw of Shift Control Alt and C.
Is that your own shortcut?
Well, that one's built. There's a plugin that came out called Snapping Pies that does it, and I've just been using it ever since. So now all these objects are linked. They all have their unique origin. So I can make whatever changes I need to, and it'll happen to all of them. In fact, since their data is linked, when I go into edit mode, they all activate in edit mode. Yeah. So to take it a step further, we can actually select this object. I'll do it without hard ops. We'll just choose mirror, or not mirror on this one. We'll choose this object, choose mirror, and it says mirror object. We'll click the little eyedropper. We'll choose this, and instead of mirroring on the X, we'll mirror it on the Y. So now this object's being mirrored to the other side. However, we want the rest of these to also get the same situation. Now, personally, by this point, I would have long have selected everything and pressed Control G to make a group, and we would have called this nodes, and that way selecting them would have been a matter of me selecting one and pressing Shift G to select the same items that are in a group,
Gotcha.
which is a lot easier. So, continuing on, we'll select all these, select the prime one that we want to copy, and instead of copying object data, which we're already doing, we'll copy modifiers, and that'll actually give all of these the same modifiers, the same object data, and everything is connected. In fact, now you can see that the modifiers don't update until after I've exited edit mode.
Mm-hmm. So Jerry, if you were to create a little tiny cube or something sitting at the bottom of this thing, like a little tiny cube that has nothing, doesn't look anything like that round thing, right? So just create a separate box somewhere,
All right.
and now make that. So that's your component. That's your instance. Make that an instance of the others.
So if I wanted this to be an instance of, say, even the big house,
Yeah.
it would just be a matter of linking the object data. Or if I wanted to link it to this, I could link its object data.
So is the scale a function? Can you when you did the house, is there a way to scale it so it matches the house exactly, or was that?
Okay, so on the house, we'll apply the scale. So now the house is 1.
Yeah.
And on this, we'll apply the scale. First, we'll make it unique. So if you ever want to break away an object from its data so you can modify it, you just press U, and you can make a single user. In fact, we'll choose an object, and we see that it doesn't separate the data.
Right.
So you actually have to choose object plus data, and now this is unique. So now I can do whatever I want to this, and it won't propagate here.
Gotcha.
So we'll apply the scale. So the scale is 1. So if we link this now to the big house, it's exactly the size of the
God, right. So so every object has an inherent scale. Is that correct?
Yeah, so sometimes in object mode I can be a little sloppy with the scale. However, under the transformation menu here, we can always see what we're looking at here. So right now, you see that the scale has been applied on this. However, on this item, it's actually 0.18 of what it was initially. So we can actually select all these, using Shift G, select all in group, and we just press Control A. We apply the scale, and it should have updated up here. Let's try.
Is it because it's grouped?
That's probably it. Or actually because it's all sharing the same data. So we'll select them all. We'll press U, object plus data, Control A, scale, and then we will shift select this one, making this our prime selection again. Control L, object data.
So notice one of the things about that scale command, you can go back to that scale command real quick. It's at the scale's at 1, but notice that the dimensions, you still have access to the actual dimensions. That's unique. That's something that SketchUp doesn't do. I like that.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to experiment a little more with precision placement, seeing that the angles and stuff like that are actually readable and usable with modifiers in a way. All right. All right. I'll start off deleting the object. We'll turn on screen sharing. I'll press Shift A, add a plane. We'll scale it by 3 just for kicks. And we'll take this and just push it over, just something arbitrary. So, with any object that we add, for example, I'm just going to select this edge, Shift S to snap my cursor there, and we will go ahead and add a cube in object mode. So we'll press GX1 to orient it precisely one blender unit over, thus giving me it being flush with the edge. I'll press GZ1, which will make it flush with the ground. And then I'll press Shift S, but we'll use the actual Blender hotkey of Control Alt Shift C. Try pressing that about 10 times, and you'll be looking for that snapping pies plugin, I assure you. We'll set it origin to a 3D cursor. So now we're able to, of course, scale this and get it exactly how we want, for the first building. And then, since we're in object mode, we have object level control, so we can still, orient and make our second building, even snapping it. However, when it comes to the other side of getting something flush, that's where empties would come in. A good way to kind of get a good understanding of your angles is enabling face angle. And so we see here that our angle's at 108.241. I'm just going to insert an empty using the arrows. And because of its location, I forgot the number immediately, 108.241. So we will R108.241, R108.2. Are we looking at the right thing?
It might be the one below down the bottom.
71.759, or 71.759. And so now that we have our rotation, thanks Chip, we'll change our snap element to edge, and while pressing grab, we'll hold control, and it'll just let us place this anywhere we want along an edge. So it doesn't matter, we'll just place it.
When you say press grab, is that like a shortcut key grab?
G is grab.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Whenever you grab, if you hold control, it'll actually activate your snapping controls that are down here. If you turn it on, they're on by default. So now when I move it, it's just going to snap to all edges. But if you have it under your control behavior, it's more like I now want to modify my snapping to be enabled versus the alternate way. So an interesting hotkey we were talking about was you can select an object and press Shift Numpad 7, and I'll actually orient us to this object. And so instead of fighting with the creation of a custom transform orientation, we're just going to change this to local and press Numpad 5 in order to go into orthographic. And Control S, snap cursor, Shift A, add a cube. And right here, before we do anything else, we can either deal with our T-panel option here and align it to view, or press F6 and use that align to view, which I press F6 a lot because it's one of the buttons on my mouse now. So we have it aligned to view. We'll press G, Y, Y again to change to local, -1. And from here, we're going to GZ1, similar to we did on the other side. And I'm just going to use Shift S and set the origin to the cursor. So that'll just give us precisely exactly what we're going for there. And to get the same scale as this other cube, I'm going to scale it slightly smaller. We'll press S, and what is the scaling of this cube? We might as well just copy its data. Port 5. And I'm sure there's actually an easy way you can copy the scale. You can also hover your mouse over a parameter, press Control C, and then I'm just going to the other object and pressing Control V. And then now I can just scale this to the size that I want. And then for the subsequent one, I can press G or Control Shift D to duplicate it without it being a instance of this one, and then press Y to constrain it to the Y, press Y again to constrain it to the local Y, and then from here I'm able to change the scaling as I see fit, of course having to double tap it in order to go to the local version of it. But both of these are unique objects. For example, if we were to make modifications on this one, similar to the previous example, we'll see that, you know, it's unique. In fact, we can even link their data if we wanted them to receive that same information with the scaling difference. So there is a reason when I keep the scale a little off in object mode before I apply everything. It is almost a finishing step, but scaling only affects certain operations, mainly the bevel in my life. That's how I would go about doing it. And anytime I need to jump to this orientation, I would just press Shift 1, Shift numpad 7, Shift numpad 3.
With this selected, with that cursor select, well, yeah, with that empty selected. Okay. So I got one more thing to ask you, Jerry. Let's see. So, and that is, I want you to look at this. So this is a cube, and I'm going to take this point and kind of drag it up and around a little bit, kind of bizarre, in a bizarre fashion, right? So let's see. Actually, that's not what I want. Let's try it this way, like this. There, that's better. Okay, so I just dragged it straight up. So I want to take this and this and this and hit the fillet button, and hit return. Oops, actually I didn't do it. I need to hold on. I need to that actually is not what I want. This is what I want. So we have two surfaces coming together here. So I want to take this and fillet these two. I don't know if you can tell what that surface is there, Jerry, but when I hit yes, notice that we don't even get close to a good fillet on this thing, right? So, or if I were to say select everything, or actually let's hide this. So select everything, hide this one too. Okay, so I've got this kind of coplanar crazy thing, right? Select it, fillet it, return, and you just can't do it because these are coplanar, these are non-coplanar faces. Do you follow me, Jerry? So I think Blender can do this. Can it?
I don't know. We'll have to find out real quick.
Okay, let's go take a look.
All right, so I got a cube. And you're saying you're just pulling the face
up, and yeah, just pull it up and around. Yeah, so
like hit back. Yeah, we'll pull it up, and now it's moved on every axis. So if we were to you know, triangulate this shape, it actually looks something like that. But because it's n-gons, it looks like nothing.
Yes, I think that's the difference. I think the n-gons is why it can be beveled. You can hit the bevel key now and bevel that whole thing, right?
Yeah, but it still is one of those forms that's like, what the heck is this? Because if we take this vert and this vert and press J to you know, create a lightning bolt between them, we see that we got some pretty
unique. Yeah, but let's go back. So this is an example, kind of a bad example, but there are plenty of examples in real life where, if you look at if you look at, like, we move this out like this, and then we might take and move this one in like this. So you might have something like kind of a rhombus surface, right? And maybe move this one out and this one. So we've got, like, it's not like it's got a little bit of a change, but this surface and this and this, it won't do it in SketchUp. And the reason why is because it does this automatic triangulation thing. I think that's why. I know Frito's plugins are great, and I've talked to him about this, and he says that it's much more difficult in SketchUp to actually write a good beveler in a radius tool than it is in other programs. And one of the reasons that I really am excited about working in Blender is because not only can I do bevels, but in Blender, but I can also do non-destructive bevels, can't we?
Yes. So you can also handle it via the modifier. I mean, in this case, I'm actually just goofing off in object mode and beveling bevels to see how the surface is, getting deformed. But, before certain tool was to automate the process, if you were working and you were trying to, say, mark the edges in order to have the bevel behave a certain way, or even add a bevel modifier, you would have to come over to the panel and add it through the modifier panel and then make some adjustments. We've always worked at a profile of 0.7, just something we've agreed on. We change it to angle, and of course you have to shade the object smooth. So and that's just getting started. I mean, you still have to go and check auto smooth, set the angle to 60, and then go in here and delete. Like this edge right here is definitely working against the bevel modifier. If we take a look at what we have here, we'll duplicate it over and just compare. Just taking these two edges and dissolving them will resolve that.
Does that mean delete them? Delete the edges? You're just deleting them?
Yeah, Control X will dissolve. So there's also the option of just pressing X, and you can just press dissolve vertices. So it's the same thing. Just I think with edges, it's just a much faster hotkey.
So you wrote this program called HardOps, and it does all that with one step. Is that right?
Yeah. Let's put this back at the very beginning. So if we were to get this started on the same path,
all right,
that would just be S sharpen, and then if we were to level it up to the level of dealing with a bevel modifier, we would go up to C. And so we're already where we started with this one. And then as far as the system of cleaning things up to get the bevel looking better, that would just come down to us using clean mesh, which will actually go into edit mode and do the behavior for you. In fact, I think a glitch just happened where this shape also got cleaned up. Let's look at that again. So this is something I need to find out why it's actually happening. This object got cleaned, even though it's not selected. So I don't know why that's actually happening, but yeah.
So can I edit that geometry, and will those bevels stay live?
Well, right now at this point, since it's a modifier, we can still go through and make modeling changes.
Look at that. Look at that. So that's another cool thing is you can continue to edit, and you'll keep those radiuses on there. That's pretty neat.
So that's something that, we share in common. In fact, these two are what we're looking at if we're just using just default modifiers and shading. And of course, we operate a little bit more complicated via the marking of edges, which allows us to unmark edges at will. For example, we've now chosen to unmark all of these edges, meaning they're no longer getting beveled without us even having to add a radius to change that, which just gives us a slightly smoother result in operation we found. And we can even do the same thing here, unmark, bevel.
So can you just do a real quick demo of a dynamic Boolean?
All right, let's see. So we have our cube. We will GZ1, Control A, apply location, scale it down, real small, bring in our second cube. And first we'll put this one in a C sharpened state. Notice that because the scaling is off, that the bevel looks odd. So if we use B-width, it actually will allow you to adjust the bevel interactively in addition to applying the scale. So it does a little bit more than just applying the bevel. So we'll take this object and then we'll shift select this object and press Control minus. And now this object is now being cut inside here live. The core of HardOps is actually the Q menu system. So based off of the context, the Q menu options will be different. The first three options are always the three most recommended based off of context. For example, C sharpen will apply this bevel. We'll apply this Boolean. We can move on with our lives. We can also adjust the bevel that's going on with it, even though the Boolean is still pending. We can also do what's called slashing, which will actually split the mesh out and give us a second selection. In addition to that, even the shape here that we're using to cut has its own series of options where we're able to bevel it before we commit it, allowing us to work on, our interior bevel and the rounding. We can also add thickness, which will turn this into a hollow cutter, meaning that we will get only the area edge border cut out. And then there's also the option to array, which we'll change that to the Y, and we can actually choose how far we want to go with this. So let's hide this and actually see sharpen. So now all of this is applied. All these little artifacts are due to the bevel amount being too much. If we lower it, we see that we're no longer stretching over the artifacts. Now, the reason this happens is because of something called clamp overlap. If we were to click clamp overlap, we see that the bevel modifier is far more limited in the scope in which it's able to go. So for reasons like that, we keep it unlocked and prefer to keep manual control. So hypothetically, if we wanted to, say, give a larger area to the body, but a smaller area to these pieces, we can say, select this piece, hide it, select all these pieces, and we will go ahead and adjust what's called the B weight. Now, if we press H, it'll display help. And we see that we have an option here for A, select all weights, or Control A, select all weights present. We can actually give this a weight influence of, say, 0.2. And now we can actually go much, much higher with the larger bevel while still retaining control over the smaller one. So it's just a preference of working. Even to take it a step further, we can say use the knife Z to cut through the mesh, press E, cut through, press E. And the reason I'm doing this is because there's all these cross edges happening on the mesh, which will actually cause beveling artifacts. And they're actually quite avoidable, but care must be taken to avoid them. In fact, here's an example of a bevel artifact caused just by the stray edge being here. I could also clean the edge, put a line down the middle, and that would just perfect it. But it's easier to just select these, Shift X or Control X, and go ahead and dissolve them. And now we have our form ultimately looking the way that we want it. Now, this is yes. Box cutter is pretty much the tool you saw with cutting and hard ops, however optimized in a faster format. So while hard ops is basically a toolkit allowing me to do everything from symmetrizing my mesh to doing a 360 rotated version of it, to changing my viewport to be minimal or looking at things at matcap, box cutter comes in at being purely focused on just cutting. So
it's kind of like a slicer and a Boolean cutter. Is that what it is?
Yes. And the tool's also integrated with hard ops. So as you do your cuts and you have the hard ops connection box checked right here under the T panel, it'll actually perform the sharpening behavior as you're working. So that way it'll integrate nicely. It also does a couple of other things where it'll take advantage of the stepping system, which is another more advanced way of working with multiple levels of bevels. In addition to cutting in object mode, you can also cut in edit mode. So for example, right here, I can just cut a circle, turn it into an N-gon, push it in, select these, mark them sharp with hard ops. While it's still selected, I can actually lower the B weight, so that way I don't have to disturb the actual larger bevel width that's happening. And then to top it off, I can select this area here, press Q, go under Insert, and just choose one of the many inserts that have been added into hard ops and go ahead and insert it in this area. and from there symmetrize it. And it's a jump between hard ops and box cutter at this point. So inserts are purely a hard ops thing, but one of the things that's built in is you can select an object, shift select a second object, and by pressing Alt Shift X, you can mirror an object to the other side. So now this object is being mirrored across this object.
So that's like it's having its own little kit bash system. Is that what that is?
Yeah, in a way. The inserts were there to kind of help people, come up with ideas for adding Greeble to models, and the box cutter's there for making form adjustments and dealing with the overall shape in a way that's faster than inserting boxes. In fact, right here, we see a little artifact happen as a result of me cutting and beveling on an ingon mesh that has no information, I guess, for it to go off of. But here I'm using box cutter, hard ops kind of in tandem to just create a trench and bring it down. In fact, after lowering the bevel width of this area, you see that right here, there's a little bit of pain being caused by this erroneous edge. We do have a couple of different ways of dealing with that. However, they're somewhat impersonal. For example, let's say we're cutting a box in right here. And so right here, I'll select this vert, use hard ops, change it to a circle, and we're just going to create a circular divot. So we'll sharpen it. And we see that it's too big because we're just using a very large bevel on the larger areas compared to these finer details we're adding. This is also where something like stepping would come in, but that's another time. So here we got our divot created. We'll mirror it to the other side. Select this, go under Insert, and keep in mind, anytime I'm bringing up the menu for hard ops, I'm pretty much just pressing Q. Q is the primary hotkey. Most of the functions can actually use in the local mode ZZ to scale it on the Z. Select both, Alt-Shift-X. One thing to also notice is that when this insert was brought in, it had some proxy materials on it. And these materials have come in with .001 on all of them, meaning that they're a copy of the instance of the original insert. And if we look at this one, we see that this one also is the original. So you can also, at any time select every object in the scene, press Q, and under operations, there's a function called material link, which will consolidate materials and remove duplicates. So now you can see on the data a little 2 appeared, and if we click on the object, all the materials have been linked. So the tools vary between the two, but it's basically a toolkit versus a tool of hard surface operations. In fact, we also have see a little artifacting in there, probably get to that. We also have options for things such as depth cutting. So we'll look at it from the side, put cursor down, we'll rotate our view and just draw a box, hold Alt, and it will cut in. Now, before I went through and actually did the cut, I pressed D to turn off Apply Boolean. And by turning off Apply Boolean, I'm able to keep the box live. More likely in a future version, we'll have this mapped to a hotkey at the time that will change the hue slightly or something in order to let you know that you're basically drawing a live box. But even though this Boolean is still here, I also have Q options similar to earlier where I can array it. However, we see that, the feedback of it gets a little slow. Also, I see that this particular insert is, sorry, I went in awake paint mode. This particular insert is being, this particular cut is being arrayed on its local axis, which is good in most cases. I think I might have requested that. However, it's not what I desire in this situation. So we'll actually move it on the local without an array. And we'll just hide that, C# to commit it, maybe lower the bevel just a little bit. Alt X to mirror, which is a hard op stain. So you see how they kind of work in tandem together. Like one's not literally made to replace the other, but their purposes overlap just slightly, only in that hard ops is almost like a demo of what type of cutting behavior we had planned for box cutter in the end.
Is when you say dissolve, that means delete? You're just deleting the edge. Is that what you're doing?
Yes, just press Control X is a little faster than pressing X and going through the menu.
Well, great. Well, thanks, Jerry. That's good. I'm gonna come up with some other ideas on how we can do stuff from SketchUp into Blender. But this has been extremely helpful. I'm sure that the folks that follow at least my SketchUp channel would find this extremely interesting. So if you guys haven't followed any of Jerry's stuff, Jerry, can you pull up an ArtStation or something to show? I just want to see show him a little bit of some of the stuff that you've done. Jerry's like one of the top, I mentioned Blender guys in the world, and he's been featured quite a bit in other people's videos, as well as he's done a lot of work in a lot of different applications, not just Blender, but Blender's kind of, I think, his favorite one. Yeah, that's because
I was looking at my graphics card earlier because people were telling me they can no longer find GTX 1070s or 1080s. Yeah, so I went to look up my graphics card, and it's permanently out of stock now.
I've got a 1080 foundation, I think it is. So yeah, go ahead and expand full screen so we see the whole. Or I don't know if yeah, there you go. So this is some of Jerry's stuff, and he's built all these things with hard ops, which is kind of interesting because a lot of people have to go through ZBrush to do the same thing, and with Jerry doing it in hard ops, he creates a model that doesn't have a billion polygons, and there's a lot of really cool stuff that we can share in some other videos. But
yeah, I also have a ton of videos that kind of cover the internals of the process, as well as how I go about getting some of the results that I aim for. When hard ops was initially created, it was like kind of a concept tool to help me make characters easier and process things that would be easier in the end than subdivision. I mean, there was a time in my life when subdivision ruled my modeling style and workflow, and it also started to kind of hinder my design a little bit. Trying to think of someone in here that was made so far back with subdivision, and it was actually once I stopped using it as much, or began using it only as a step, that I was freer to explore different aspects of design. Like I think this one was one of my finales that I did using sub.
it's interesting because Sub-D has a special look to it. You can kind of tell stuff Sub-D. I don't know how to explain it, but it doesn't have the same look as some of your other stuff does. I mean, and I've noticed that with a lot of Sub-D models, not yours in particular, but other people's too. It's just got this kind of like a soft gummy bear look to them. I don't know how to explain it, but anyway, I'm not a big fan of Sub-Ds either. I think that they have their place, but certainly aren't.
I mean, especially if you're dealing with ingons, subdivision will never treat it. Will never treat it right.
Okay, well, I'm going to call it a night then, and thanks, Jerry. And we're gonna do another one of these. So appreciate it.
Oh yeah, holla holla.
Okay, see you. Bye.